When Prince Harry finally set foot back in Britain after years of separation, the moment did not resemble a reunion. There were no public embraces, no symbolic gestures of healing, no sense of relief. What observers noticed instead was something quieter and far heavier: fatigue, emotional depletion, a man who looked less like someone returning home and more like someone carrying unresolved weight. This story was never meant to surface in this way. In fact, many believe it was never supposed to surface at all, because once questions surrounding Meghan Markle's pregnancies began circulating beyond rumor and into whispered legal concern, Harry didn't push outward, he withdrew. Not away from the institution he once rejected, but toward it, toward the monarchy itself, one of the few systems powerful enough to contain what was becoming increasingly unstable. And that is where this account truly begins. According to an individual described as a former legal advisor with close ties to the Sussex inner circle, there was a private evening when Harry reached a breaking point. No press, no recorded statements, no prepared narrative, just an emotional release in a closed setting, prompted by pressure that had become impossible to suppress. That advisor alleges Harry made a confession that altered everything. He reportedly stated that Meghan did not physically carry their children, that the public version of events, the one repeated in interviews, announcements, and official releases, was not the complete truth. Instead, it was the version Meghan insisted upon, and the version Harry agreed to stand behind, believing it was the safest option for their family. At the time, secrecy felt like protection, silence felt like loyalty. But years later, that same silence has become, according to those close to him, an unbearable burden. People familiar with Harry's state of mind describe him not as angry or defensive, but emptied, worn down by guilt. Not because alternative reproductive arrangements exist, they are common and lawful in many places, but because of the sustained deception required to maintain the story. He didn't think it would grow into this, one source claims he said quietly. He thought it would end. Those words matter because they suggest this was never designed as a long-term deception. It was something entered step by step, each choice justified as temporary, until the narrative hardened into something that could no longer be undone without consequences. For years, one figure remained entirely unseen. Her identity has not been publicly confirmed, and for legal reasons, she is referred to only as DL. According to her account, DL is not simply linked to the story, she claims she is central to it. DL alleges she was not only a gestational carrier, but the biological mother of both children. She claims to possess DNA documentation, medical files, contractual records, and private correspondence that support her assertion. Materials, she says, were never meant to leave sealed folders. For a long time, DL did not speak publicly. She was bound by extensive confidentiality agreements that required her to remain anonymous, silent, and legally invisible. She says she was promised security, financial compensation, and ongoing discretion. According to DL, those promises were never fulfilled. She alleges payments stopped prematurely. Communication ended abruptly. No follow-up, no acknowledgement. She describes being cut out entirely, as if her role never existed. For years, she accepted that erasure. She believed the system would honor its commitments. But when she realized it would not, she says she made a decision that changed everything. She would not disappear twice. To understand how DL entered this situation, her account traces back to late 2018. She says she was contacted through a third party associated with a high-end fertility network known for handling cases involving extreme privacy. The message was deliberately vague. A globally recognizable couple required assistance. Absolute discretion was mandatory. Identities would remain sealed. Compensation would reflect the level of confidentiality required. DL agreed. She says she signed multiple non-disclosure contracts, underwent medical evaluations, and entered a system designed to minimize traceability. According to her, even clinic staff were given limited identifying information about the intended parents. She followed every medical protocol, every scheduled visit, every condition outlined in the agreements. When the child was delivered, she claims the transition was swift and silent. No follow-up care beyond the immediate medical requirement, no personal contact, no closure. From that moment forward, she says, she ceased to exist within the official narrative. What followed, according to DL, was not merely secrecy, it was substitution. A new version of events was introduced publicly, one that excluded her entirely. Press announcements, carefully staged moments, a storyline that projected continuity and normalcy. Initially, few questioned it. When the palace announced Meghan was in labor, the world waited. When news of the birth followed almost immediately, it was accepted as a private preference, a modern approach, a desire to avoid spectacle. But DL's claim challenges that timeline. She alleges the child had already been born weeks earlier, outside the UK, far from royal hospitals, in a controlled private setting in the United States. No cameras, no official witnesses, just a delivery followed by silence. If that allegation holds weight, then the later public presentation was not an introduction, but a reveal, timed to align with a narrative already in motion. She claims dates were adjusted deliberately, announcements delayed, records curated, not to create drama, but to prevent questions. And once that possibility is considered, details that once seemed minor begin to feel unsettled. When Meghan Markle appeared publicly days after the birth announcement, many praised her composure. She stood upright, impeccably dressed, heels steady, posture relaxed. Commentators described her as resilient, glowing, strong. DL offers a different interpretation. She alleges Meghan did not experience childbirth at all, and if that claim is accurate, then the public moment was not simply a display of confidence, it was a performance designed to confirm a version of motherhood without revealing its physical reality. At that point, the situation moves beyond optics. Because childbirth is not just a visual event, it creates records. Hospital admissions, discharge summaries, attending physicians, signatures, timelines. According to DL, this is where the situation became legally hazardous. She claims her name does not appear on any publicly accessible medical documentation connected to the children. No discharge forms, no hospital acknowledgments, no official paperwork. And she alleges that omission was intentional. She claims she was explicitly told that no identifying trace could remain. No signatures, no references, nothing that could be followed later. If that instruction was carried out, then the issue is no longer secrecy, it becomes reconstruction. Months later, observers noted a quiet amendment to official birth records, a name alteration, a change explained publicly as administrative. At the time, few questioned it, but placed alongside DL's account, that modification appears less benign, not a correction, but a containment measure, a way to prevent scrutiny from extending too far into documentation that could unravel the narrative. DL alleges extensive efforts were made to ensure her invisibility, financial transactions routed through layered entities, clinic files sealed, legal buffers established. But, she says, she retained copies of everything, agreements, correspondence, receipts, because silence, in her view, was conditional, and once that condition was violated, the evidence became protection. At this stage, the matter ceases to be personal. It becomes institutional. Royal succession is not ceremonial, it is legal. It relies on verifiable lineage, documented birth circumstances, clear records. These requirements are not symbolic traditions, they are enforceable standards. If the publicly stated narrative does not align with documented reality, and if no formal disclosure was made, then the structure supporting that lineage becomes vulnerable. Titles can be questioned, records examined, authorities compelled to act. That is why this situation extends far beyond one family. Sources claim the palace is not primarily concerned with embarrassment, it is concerned with precedent. Because if official documentation is found to conflict with factual events, the implications reach Parliament, international law, and constitutional integrity. This is not about modern family building practices. It is about whether systems of record were knowingly misrepresented. And once that question is raised, silence takes on a new meaning. No statements, no denials, no clarifications, just absence. According to observers, this is not indecision, it is preparation. Behind closed doors, legal teams are reportedly reviewing timelines, records, and disclosures, not to manage public reaction, but to assess exposure. Because if DL presents even a portion of the material she claims to possess, the issue will move out of media control entirely. Law does not evaluate intention, it evaluates evidence. And evidence, once introduced, reshapes history. Institutions that have stood for centuries do not adjust quietly under pressure, they fracture. That is why the current silence feels deliberate, not calm, but cautious. While institutions remain still, DL is moving forward. According to individuals connected to her legal representation, she is preparing to speak publicly, not anonymously, not through leaks, but directly. They claim she intends to present documentation, including signed agreements, financial records tied to intermediary entities, correspondence with representatives connected to Harry's circle, fertility clinic records, medical billing documents, private images taken during treatment, and travel records aligning with birth timelines. If authenticated, even a fraction of that material would trigger formal investigation across jurisdictions. This is not being framed as speculation, it is being framed as testimony. And once testimony enters the public domain, narratives lose their flexibility. For Harry and Meghan, the situation has evolved beyond rumor. It has become a countdown. Because stories can be shaped, silence can delay, but evidence does not negotiate. It replaces.